Poulos, what is the crack? Welcome to the Preconstruction podcast.
Thanks for having me, Gareth. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Nice. And I was just admiring that view. That is Fort Worth, Dallas.
It is, yeah, Fort Worth right outside the windows. I'd point the camera to downtown, but the sun's beating through the windows. But yeah, it's great views here at our office in Fort Worth.
Yeah, I just remember being in Bechtech's office as well. You look out the windows and the whole land just runs for miles.
It does. It's great. Big open views. We've got a couple of bridges over here, an arena over here on this side, and the city's growing here in Fort Worth. So it's great.
Brilliant. Well, listen, Brett, rather than me talk about your background, give us a quick rundown on your position with Burns McDonnell and what you're doing right now.
Sure. So I'm the National Director of Pre-Construction and Estimating for Burns & Mac. We do about $5 billion in construction annually. We have 7 major divisions: oil and gas, power, or energy, I should say. So combined cycle power plants. We do transmission distribution, water, wastewater. We do commercial, food and consumer products, aerospace, aviation, and federal. So we do quite a bit of work in transportation as well. Quite a bit of work across all market sectors, but specifically, we're an integrated design build company. So we have in-house engineering, in-house architecture, and of course, in-house construction with self-perform capabilities as well.
Brilliant. And that is what I want to talk to you about, Brett. I hope you've got your design build hat on. But not only all those responsibilities within Burns & Mac, but you're also sit on the board of directors for the Design Build Institute of America for the Southwest chapter. And we talked about it, we've talked online, and my guests and the listeners, they're all trying to do design build. They're all looking at IPD negotiated. Clients, owners, they're pushing that way. And to be honest with you, contractors are the same. They've got more control over risk, more control over costs, and they feel that they deliver a better product. But there's very few of them that are set up the way you guys, in-house engineering, in-house architecture. Talk to us about the fundamentals of design build and what challenges, because I would imagine Burns McDonnell, I know you work with Beck Group as well. They were traditionally a design build who had architecture in-house. How difficult is it? And probably to start, what is the difference between design build and just traditional
design bid build?
Yeah,
sure. So to start it off, design build is essentially collaborative delivery. So the idea there is that everyone sits on the same side of the table as the owner. It's a partnership through the design process. To where in typical design bid build, an owner contracts with a designer and contracts with a contractor. The designer gets to work, designs their documents, and then they issue for construction. And then the market bids on those documents. So in that type of environment, what they're lacking is the feedback from the contractor, potentially what value engineering items could have been incorporated in design if you have a hot market, or long lead procurement. One of the big values of design build is that you can release early packages or phase procurement packages to where you can get ahead of lead time. So in a market today where you have long lead electrical equipment, if you have a basis of design for that equipment and you're going to design around that gear, you could release that gear within months of design starting, or within weeks really of design starting. And that's the value that I see Burns & Mac provides. Is we do a lot of design for procurement. So if there are long lead substation transformers that are 2-year lead time, we'll start those today, and we'll end up doing contract negotiations for the construction portion and a phase 2 portion of the contract to amend in construction scope and language after the fact. So that's a real big benefit of design build, is you can have multi-phase projects and multi-phase contracts. And of course, the benefit of having in-house design, architecture, and construction is that it's all one family. It's one group that you're dealing with. It's one single contract. You could still do design build with multiple parties. You can have a separate design firm from a construction company, and they partner together, which is more commonplace in design build. But I really do think there's a ton of value in having an integrated company that does all of it in-house. I could walk down the hallway and I'm talking to our designers. I can go around the corner, I'm talking to procurement. Go around the other corner and I'm talking to our construction professionals and project controls and schedulers, and it's all right here. So instead of having to, schedule a meeting that might be the end of the day or might be tomorrow with the design firm, I can literally walk down the hallway and talk to any of those partners here in-house.
Brilliant, Brett. So instead of firing F-bombs over the phone, you can go down the street. You can go down the corridor and clip a few people around the ear. I like it.
That's exactly right. And if they have questions, they can come by and say, hey, we're thinking about designing it this way from a constructability standpoint. What are your thoughts? And instead of drafting a big RFI or having a large meeting with the owner, we could sit here and have that conversation here and then take it to the owner once we've collaborated and talked about how it should be built. And there's just extreme value in that.
Brilliant. And Brett, and I know you came from the Beck Group. Obviously, they had architectural in-house. We actually had Offgang on it's an architecture firm in New York on the podcast recently. We had their director of engineering, and they found value on bringing a director of engineering into the company to be able to sort out engineering at an early stage. How valuable is that third wheel? So you've got the architecture, the construction, and now the engineering. How did that change from the Beck Group now to Burns and Mack?
So the Beck Group had acquired an architecture firm. The difference between, I guess, Beck and Burns McDonnell is that we started as an engineering company in the late 1800s and had in-house engineering, had in-house architecture, but really started in more of the public infrastructure sector. So we were heavy engineering. So I say big E, little a, lots of engineers. We do have a lot of architects, but our company has much more engineers than we do have architects. And we really target more of the complex type projects that do have heavy process or have a lot of engineering complexity. So I guess the benefit of a design build firm that has heavy architectures, you may chase vertical high rise Class A type projects, and the benefit of a design build company that's heavy engineering, you could chase some of those food and consumer products or pharmaceuticals, chemical plants, oil and gas refineries, things like that. That we excel more in just because we started as an engineering firm and have upwards of 10,000 engineers on staff.
Brilliant. And you mentioned those markets that you're in. I mean, the market's booming, specifically in those areas. How are you finding the kind of the backlog for 2023, 2024, and further afield?
It's good. Our backlogs are really strong. Again, we're very diversified, so that helps. All of our eggs are not in just a commercial basket or just an oil and gas basket. So if one market dips, generally another market picks up. In the case of public infrastructure right now, that's really picking up, and it's serving the company really well right now that we're diversified.
Fantastic. And then go back to the board of directors, the design build for the Southwest. Are you seeing more companies contact you guys coming on board, wanting to do design build? And where is that coming from? Is that driving from the market? Is it driving from owners?
So a lot of it is owner education, and they're seeing the volatility that happened through the pandemic, and a lot of projects are coming in over budget. They had priced a job at a conceptual phase. By the time they go the project or get funding for the project, now with the cost of money too, things are more expensive. And so a lot of owners are seeing the value that if we have a collaborative process and do target value design through the design phase, as opposed to doing value engineering kind of post-mortem, the documents are baked and now, hey, we're 15% over budget. How do we get this project back down? And then you're having to pay your designer to go back and design and figure out ways to cut costs. And of course, the contractor's time to do that, whether it's a pre-construction services agreement or however that's handled, you're paying more money to do that post-mortem. So if you could do that during the design process and have a constructor that could sit there and provide feedback of, I would use gear instead of this or that, or simplify this skin or this curtain wall or whatever it is to use this because of based on availability, things like that you can provide to the owner is invaluable, because once it push comes to shove and it comes time to start procuring that equipment, if that project pushes out 18 months because you didn't provide feedback on something that could have been a 12-month lead time, that comes back on the contractor, and the owners are looking for that expertise and that feedback, and design build really provides the situation to do that.
Yeah.
So one of the things I thought was interesting too is I'd read through so I'm the membership chairman. I sit on the board for DBIA, as you mentioned. One of the things I'd heard that 8.5 trillion of total U.S. construction spend between 2022 and 2026. That's what the projection is 8.5 trillion. And of that, over $2 trillion is design build.
Wow.
Which is, it used to be called alternative delivery because it was a fraction of construction spend. And now it's a large portion of construction spend. Granted, those are projections, but the Design Build Institute of America has a publication on that, and I can send that to you whenever you publish the podcast, if you'd like.
Yeah, please do, Brett. And what we'll do, folks, is we'll put it in the show notes below, a link to it, or on a PDF. But that's incredible, 2.5, and then I mean that's almost a 25%. Where do you see it going? Because design build, and if you look at the last 5 years alone, the appetite for it is through the roof.
I think inevitably long term design build is going to be the baseline form delivery. It makes the most sense. It could save the owner the most money from risk allocation, risk mitigation standpoint from both the owner side and the contractor side. It makes the most sense. It's just a better environment to do work in. And I think owners realize that, and design build entities, both designers and constructors realize that. So the future, I think, is design build.
Brilliant. And one thing I want to touch on, you just mentioned as well, is pre-construction services package or a contract. It's one thing that on the podcast is I get probably the most questions about. They call it free con, and it's in the touch of it's at the forefront of everybody's mind. Some of these young, now obviously we're a different ball game to Burns McDonnell, but some of these young innovative companies are literally basing their companies on pre-construction services. They're going out, they're being firm with the owner, the developer, and they're saying, listen, this is the value that you can get, the return on investment. I from my speaking with VPs and directors, I reckon there's people are probably covering between 15 and 40% of their costs through pre-construction services. I would like to see that higher. What's your view on it?
Sure. So I completely agree. Every contractor has free con services. And even if there is a pre-construction agreement, for the most part, we're not covering 100% of our costs in doing that. And that's okay. I think when the owners realize, especially if it's a new owner, it's a new design build relationship between the two entities. We, in a lot of cases, will not charge a pre-construction services agreement to start that relationship, to show them that the value, or really to show them the value of that process and what they get in the end. And then the next go around, they know what the value is, and we're able to recoup some of those costs through a pre-construction services agreement. I will say, I think there's a lot of value if you have an owner who doesn't quite know what they want, who might have several options or several locations on the table for where they want to build. And you might be doing some site evaluations or site selection services and costing in different regions. I would absolutely talk to your owner about having a pre-construction services agreement and explain the cost of your time, the cost of your effort to do multiple iterations. It's not like it's just one project in a typical design bid build scenario where everybody is pricing at one time. You may be pricing a project 4 or 5 times through different site adaptations or a 30, 60, 90 set. And so that time investment, I think the owners realize the value they get out of that. And you could certainly recoup some of your costs through a pre-con agreement.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's up to all the contractors. I mean, there's VPs and directors that listen to this all the time. And I would encourage everyone to start pushing back on the owners and explaining it. And it's about explaining, and it's about communication about what they get. And the more contractors that push back, and as you say, we're not looking for 100% of pre-construction services, but there's got to be a decent amount. And it's just about not getting paid for the whole thing, but just getting enough to ease your mind. Because there's a lot of people that they're even tying it into saying, listen, I'll do it for free now, but at the end or halfway through, if I can save you so much, then we've got to recoup some of that cost. And there's a little bit of risk on that as well. So I'm glad we
absolutely put some sweat equity into it and have an incentive. Absolutely. Yeah. Have an incentive deal. It shows the owner that if we don't bring the value, then we don't get the incentive. So yeah, I think that's a great approach.
Brilliant. Love it. And then, I mean, we wanted to discuss design build. It's becoming more popular. You mentioned the numbers there. Where does it, you're across 7 different divisions. You've 7 chief estimators. Does design build, is it across all of them? And where does it work best?
It is. And in some cases, we'll call it something different. So in our energy sector, if we're doing a solar farm, if we're building a combined cycle or single cycle power plant, we'll call it EPC. So engineer, procure, construct. But it's the same exact sort of delivery method. Our teams are collaborating. We're involved through the pre-construction process to provide constructability reviews and target value design. In our vertical commercial space, whether it's manufacturing or whether we're doing a project for an aerospace client, in most cases, they're going to call that design build. In the water space and public infrastructure space, they're going to call it design build as well. So it really kind of depends on the client or the market and what coin or what term they've coined. But yes, across all sectors, essentially, we're pursuing design build projects. And that's oil, gas, as I mentioned, transportation, water, power, energy, transmission, distribution, foods and consumer products, and then aviation federal. So basically every space you could work in, we're doing design build in.
Brilliant. Love it. Lovely control. And that's exactly what you want. And that's how you're set up. Now, this leads me on to the next question. We mentioned both of us were at Advancing Pre-Construction this year, which was an absolute hit. I have to say, it's my first time. I know you said it was your first time. I would highly recommend anybody listening to go to Advancing Pre-Construction. I was a little bit skeptical. Hanson Wade, I worked with him a little bit on promoting it, but I have to say I was blown away. It was brilliant for not only the tech companies, but everyone just to collaborate. The way it was set up, the way that the different speakers on different topics, it was brilliant.
It was, I went out there to talk to several tech companies within the construction space, and I found a lot of value in that. But I also found a lot of value in talking to contractors about those technologies and about the technology platforms they're using, and what's happening within the industry for AI and technological advances. So not only going to the vendors direct, but seeing what our peers are doing. What's working for them, what's not working for them. And there was a lot of value in that, and a lot of conversations that were open and honest between the contractors that I thought was really valuable.
And listen, and this comes back to design build, like you said. It's all about communication and collaboration. I think there's a stigma within general contractors that everyone's got to keep their own information, keep their own wins, their own losses, and keep their own headaches in-house. BIM VDC, that area, and I've said this before on the podcast, they are unbelievable at collaborating. They put free stuff out on YouTube. They are the most helpful, open-minded, collaborative kind of group of people that I've ever seen. I think contractors, pre-construction department, estimating departments within general contractors need to take a leaf out of their book. And I got that as well at Advancing Pre-Construction, and that's what I was most happy about.
It's the future. The BIM VDC portion and model-based estimating is the future of estimating.
Yeah.
So with AI integrations, with open AI between platforms to take a Revit model or Rhino model or whatever you're modeling in Plant 3D, and incorporating that into your estimate, or estimating directly out of a 3D platform is inevitably the future of construction. And our company has been positioning ourselves to standardize our code of accounts for how we code materials. And we're going to incorporate that same thing to where our models that we're designing to are going to have the same cost code or code of accounts that our estimating models have, that go out and our project teams use their time cards or code their time to where it's one integrated system. And the idea is the future of estimating is that 3 dimensions in AI environment. So we're positioning ourselves today for what we think the construction industry is going to be 7 years from now or 10 years from now. And a lot of folks at that Advancing Pre-Construction conference are doing the same.
Yeah, that's it. And that's what I love. Everybody's thinking along the same lines. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a few outliers that are way ahead of everyone else,
Sure.
But as they say, as the Chinese say, when's the best time to plant a tree 7 years ago? When's the next best time today? That has to happen. And the contractors that I was speaking to, the people I had on the podcast from Advancing Preconstruction, they're all at different stages. But it's really important that the people, no matter what stage they're at, they've got to be open and honest. And you mentioned the whole flow thing on the data. The data flow is important to you. I mean, with everything being integrated and in-house with you, how difficult is it going to be to get that data flow running through the whole project?
So that's the backbone of this initiative is the standardization of our code of accounts. And the whole reason for it is what we're calling cost 360. And it's taking the estimated costs versus the as-built cost and filtering the data out for what was scope creep, what was potentially missed scope, what was change orders, and then filtering that back through to our code of accounts back into our estimating platform. So we can do a realization of data on how close were we, or how over or how under are we? Can we be more competitive, or did we potentially lose money on that one line item? And the more data we have, the more sophisticated we can be as a design build contractor. And a lot of that is whether it's design efficiencies or whether it's actual production in the field. That data is extremely valuable, but I think it's probably going to take us about 18 months to get exactly where we need to be. Probably 14 months from today. When we started it was about 18 months. But that's where we're heading, and I think everybody else is likely heading in the same direction as AI and all of this technology we have at our fingertips becomes more available.
Brett, I'm going to act like an owner now. I love nothing better than a line in the sand. 14 months from now, you're going to be on the Pre-Construction podcast telling us how it's all working so beautifully.
That's right. I actually listened to Kevin Waddell's, our chief water estimator, his podcast with you. And one of the things he talked about too was at 5%, within 5%. Yeah. And I can tell you that project is there. And one of the Brilliant. Things you guys talked about was having him back on to talk about whether it's in that window. And it Brilliant. Is. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, that's what it's all about. Like, you know what I mean? You got to have something to strive for. And I can imagine in 14 months how nothing's easy, but how much more less risk, how much more enjoyable estimating and pre-construction will be when we get these technologies, these AIs. And that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about. There seems to be a lot of single point solutions out there. How do we get them all talking to one another through APIs and the data flowing properly? Is that the biggest challenge?
It is. I think, yeah, having the open API to where these platforms can communicate with each other. And inevitably, I'm hoping some of these companies can consolidate and merge and become a unified platform. But it is, yeah, the API is the benefit right now. And if they don't have an open API to where they can communicate back and forth, it's kind of a strike against them, because that's what we need. Everybody in the industry needs that.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny, I talked to quite a lot of the vendors down there, and I agree with you, right? There's got to be a lot of mergers, acquisitions, and it's going to happen, and it's going to be happen for the benefit. But what we don't need is 2 players or 3 players. We need disruption. Right. We need people competing with each other. We need good competition. And to be honest with you, and we went through quite a lot of the people, a lot of them are open to that because they know that that's what they need to drive each other on.
And that's what stems innovation. Absolutely.
Yeah, yep. 100%. Absolutely. So talk to me now. I mean, within our own company here, within the podcast, we use AI. Right now within Burns McDonnell, what are you looking at AI wise? Where do you see it being utilized immediately within the next 4 or 5 months?
So within the company, we're using it for a handful of things right now. The future state, it's going to be even more. But we're even using it for like safety notifications, on advanced notifications on when your safety training expires. And we're using AI to mine our database of training modules and give us a feedback report. And it notifies each individual, or will notify each individual employee 30 days out or 45 days out of when their safety training expires, to make sure that we don't get to that point where it is expired and they have to go in and renew their training. So it's preemptive. And that's helping us in that space. The future of estimating, I think, is going to involve a lot of AI. The estimator is not going anywhere. The pre-construction professional is not going anywhere. But I think the day-to-day, some of the mundane task of quantity takeoff and things like that our estimators and pre-construction professionals are going to have to become, they are going to become more sophisticated and focus on other items and sharpen those tools, as opposed to the QTO, quantity takeoff type stuff that we'll be able to generate out of models through AI. So I think that's inevitably the future. Again, our estimators and pre-construction professionals aren't going anywhere, but I think that the AI is going to strengthen our abilities and skill sets to where they could focus on more pressing issues.
Absolutely. And that's the exciting part of it. I mean, I get people text me all the time, should, like real junior people, oh my God, should I change industry? I said, where are you going to change to? You're not going to go to financial services. You're not going to become a lawyer. They're going to go first. Your job is safe. Construction is safe. The meme going around LinkedIn is brilliant at the minute. I mean, AI ain't going to build many buildings, you know. Nope. And that's the beauty of being a pre-construction professional and an estimator right now. It's going to lift those mundane stuff for the real mission critical, critical thinking, the soft skills that the real good, and communication, that the real good estimators and pre-construction managers are good at. And I love that. Now, I want to touch on one thing that we talked about earlier, and it's really important, especially with Burns McDonnell on the design build side, and that's the self-performing aspect of it. Tell me a little bit about that. Is that an area that you guys are trying to expand into? How's that going? How's that kind of progressing?
It is. So Burns and Mac has about, I believe the number's now around 13,000 employee owners. One of the great things about Burns and Mac is we are employee owned as well, 100% employee owned. And we have about 2,000 craft. So craft skilled labor right now sits around 2,000. We have an office in Pearland, Texas and South Texas that a lot of our teams on our constructor side or self-perform side sit. And then we have an office in Appleton, Wisconsin through an acquisition we made several years ago, a company called ASCO. And we have a prefab shop, a metal shop, and they do self-perform as well. So a lot of the solar fields we do that are massive solar fields, we're actually fabricating the helical piles that are going on those projects. It's something that's repetitive and it's done over and over and over again. So it's something we realize there's value in us actually fabricating that ourselves because it's the same sort of item. And so we're self-performing the installation and the fabrication of those helical piles. But we're doing self-perform on substations, oil and gas refineries. We're kind of targeting the heavy industrial markets first, and then we're going to branch out into more of the vertical markets next.
Brilliant, exciting times. And that's the beauty of being, it sounds like obviously you guys are a huge company, but you seem quite agile as well when it comes to innovation and self-performing. I mean, that's not always the case when you look at these big guys or big players. They're kind of rigid and they keep doing what's working, and that's, unless you're moving forward, you're moving backwards.
That's right. Yeah, we want the agility. Not only on our self-perform side, but our procurement side, we directly procure billions of dollars in equipment every year because we want to be able to control our own destiny. So we want to control the procurement cycle, and we also want to control the construction cycle, the actual performance of construction cycle, because as the labor market starts to shrink, and it has been shrinking year after year, we realize there's value in having on-site staff, on-site labor within the trades. That could be able to execute a lot of this work for us. So the more we realize that we could control our own destiny, the better off we were. So it started in procurement, and now it's growing into self-perform. So yeah, it's the way that we like doing business for sure.
Yeah, no, I could talk to you all day about this, but Brett, I think it's a brilliant advantage to you guys as well when it comes to a recruitment tool, because you can bring people into trades, and then you can monitor, manage, develop people right up through the business, whether it's right into pre-construction, estimating, operations, it doesn't matter. BIM, VDC, if you see some good young lady that's doing, as you say, the substation, and she wants to get to go back to school to then get into VDC and BIM, then you can facilitate that move.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we actually have folks in our estimating department who came off their tools and are now working in the office. And it's a great pathway. One, it strengthens our internal estimating team because there's a person there who's actually built it in the field and has spent years in the trades. And two, it provides them an opportunity when they're ready to settle down and have a family or come off the road, take a break from traveling, and they can sit there and bring value to us in the pre-construction department. So I absolutely agree. It's a great opportunity for them and a great opportunity for us.
Brett, you're the same as Kevin. I could sit here all day. Unfortunately, unfortunately, we're running out of time. So listen, I want to thank you very much. Obviously, there's going to be people listening to this. They're going to be saying, "Listen, Brett was unbelievable," but there's a couple of things I want to kind of but not push back on, but find a little bit of information. What's the best way to kind of get in touch? Is it through LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, absolutely. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to have a conversation.
Brilliant. Absolutely. As always, folks, the other document that Brett mentioned, I'll put in the show notes along with his LinkedIn profile, and they can shoot you a connection. Thank you again very much, Brett.
Great. Thanks, Gareth.